مرحبا وأهلا وسهلا فيكم. I hope you're all well and have a wonderful day. Welcome to another session of learning Levantine Arabic. This is Ibrahim with you. In today's session, as we've talked previously on a number of occasions about the active participle and how do we form it and what do we mean by the active participle. So today's session will be a little bit of revision and I'll be focusing a little bit more in details on the irregular forms. First and foremost, what do we mean by the active participle? As I've mentioned previously, the active participle refers to a motion of action. And that motion of action in Levantine Arabic, sometimes it refers to the person who's doing the action, and sometimes it refers to the action itself, which is in a way some of you might think, well, this is a little bit confusing. I wouldn't worry about it because it will be clear within the context and how do we use it. So it is the equivalent of the ER form in English, like writer, carpenter, plumber, driver, and so on. And then going back and answering the question, why do we use it? The active participle is an easy form to remember because it has 3 conjugations, and each conjugation could be used with 3 subject pronouns. How do we form it? Most of active participle forms, you add an alif after the first consonant, and if you change it to feminine, you'll add the feminine case to the end of it. And to change it to plural, all you need to do is just add an in to the end of the masculine form. For example, here in front of you, we've got a number of verbs. The first one is katab. Katab here, which means to write. And if you change it to the active participle for masculine, it's katib. So katab becomes katib, which means writer and writing, which is amazing. To have one conjugation on one form of derivatives, to have 2 meanings, so it becomes so versatile and easy to remember and to use. And that is one of the main things why it's widely used in dialects. And so it's not only in Levantine Arabic, it's used on all dialects. And to change it to feminine, because it's not a verb, so you will deal with it as it's an adjective, a description. So you would say katbe. Katbe. And to change it to plural, you would add an in to the end of it, so katbin. On the same principle, sabah becomes sabih, sabha, sabhin. Rasam, rasim, rasme, rasmin. Ba'ath, ba'ith, ba'athe, ba'athin. But as we know, in Levantine Arabic and most of other dialects, so it's not just in Levantine Arabic, hold your horses, the tha becomes a ta. So people would say ba'at, ba'at, ba'te, ba'tin. As in Arabic, and we all know one of the main reasons why dialects do flourish or continued to progress and evolve and develop is because of the ease of use and people always finding their way around a little bit more difficult, if we say, grammar and replace it with something slightly easier. Hence, the active participle is widely used in Levantine Arabic and in all dialects. As I mentioned, the main point of today's session is to look at the active participle with irregular verbs. So the first one is with hollow or Middleweak verbs. And what do we mean by Middleweak verb? It's literally every 3-letter root verb. The middle letter is an alif or R sound. So al, which means to say. And if you change it to the active participle, you need to add an alif after the first consonant, but the alif in the middle, it gets replaced and changed to nabira, or what we call a hamza. So nabira, again, it's a form of hamza. It's very advanced grammar, and I highly doubt you would need to know why or when to use it, but all you need to do is just to memorize it. Al is the verb, and if you change it to the active participle, it becomes a'il or qa'il. So, in dialect, the first pronunciation I gave, as most people in dialect, they tend to replace this harder sound, qaf, with as the glottal stop. But then here, we do have another glottal stop, which is the hamza. But then that is very difficult to pronounce, which I demonstrated that earlier, so I'll give it another try. a'il. And that pronunciation, it does sound a little bit silly. So therefore, if you find a sound, or two sounds a little bit similar, I'm afraid then you have to revert and go back to give this letter the proper pronunciation. So you would say qa'il, qa'il, qa'il. However, in dialect, always people found their way around these difficult sounds. So they replaced the glottal stop with an E, as in the double E in deep. So they would say ayil, ayil. So what they've done there, they brought the easier pronunciation for the qaf and they pronounce it as the glottal stop. And then they replaced the nabira or the hamza, and the pronunciation for it is the glottal stop. They replaced it with an E. So in a way, they made it a little bit easier for people to pronounce. And they said ayil, ayil. But you certainly can pronounce the qaf, always qaf if you wish. So you would say qayil. And again, one of the most common questions which I repeatedly get asked, can I just replace the qaf with a glottal stop with every single verb? Yes, you can, but you might come across an example similar to here, and the pronunciation would sound silly. And native speakers, they would automatically revert and pronounce the letter qaf how it should be. For you, initially, if you find your way through the language and you find it difficult, just pronounce the qaf whenever you come across it. Just make it a little bit easier for you. But then if you are studying the language full time, and then you could write down in your notebook that when there are some cases that you'd pronounce the letter qaf as the glottal stop. However, in some other occasions, you might need to go back and pronounce the letter qaf as it should be. So either way, or either pronunciation should be fine. So you could say either qayil or ayil. You choose. Then how do we change the masculine active participle to the feminine form? Well, simply all you need to do is to add the feminine case to the end of it. So it becomes qayle, qayle, or ayle. Qayil if you pronounce the qaf as it should be, or you could replace it with a glottal stop. So you'd say ayle, ayle, ayle. And similarly, if you change it to plural, you would say aylin, aylin. And if that proves itself to be a little bit difficult, then go back and pronounce the letter qaf how it should be. So you would say qaylin, qaylin, qaylin. And qayil and qaylin, as I mentioned previously, it refers to two things. And it could either mean saying or sayer. So sayer would refer to the person who's undertaking the action. So huwa qayil, he's said or he's saying. And if you would say huwa al qayil, he's the sayer, for example. So who's the person who said or did the action of talking. This is how you form the active participle from a Middleweak verb. And in this section, I do have for you a number of Middleweak verbs, such as rah, shaf, zar, ba', qas, tar, saq. Rah would become rayih, rayha, rayhin, and we use this to form our going to form, or what we call it the near future. And if you're new to the channel, I have made a tutorial dedicated to the going to form in Levantine Arabic, so definitely go to the playlist and check it out if you need a little bit more information on the going to form, or what we call it the near future in Levantine Arabic. Shaf would become shaif, shaife, shaifin. Zar would become zair, zaira, zairin. Ba' would become baya', baya'a, bayain. Qas would become qais, qaisa, qaisin. Tar would become tayir, tayira, tayirin. Saq would become sayiq, sayiqa, sayiqin. Another little reminder, why is the active participle is widely used in dialects, or in fact in all dialects, is because one conjugation could be used for three subject pronouns. Rayh could be used with I masculine, you masculine, and he. Rayha would be used with I feminine, you feminine, and she. رايحين would be used with we, you group of people, and they. So this is the reason why they are very popular versus the conjugation for every subject pronoun. In our third part, we'll be looking at how to form the active participle from Finalweak verbs. What do we mean by Finalweak verb? A Finalweak verb is every verb that has 3 letters, some to have more, that would come down the line. But the final letter is alif maqsoora, or short alif. How do we pronounce it? It's simply a as in apple. So you would say haka. Haka, which means to say. Again, a Finalweak verb is every verb that has 3 letters, could have more, but the final letter is a, or ends with an a, and that a has a name, and it's called alif maqsoora, which means short alif. And how do we form the active participle from Finalweak verb? We would do the following. First, you still need to add the alif, which you would always do when you come to form the active participle. The other thing is, because this is an irregular verb and the R reverts back to its original root form, therefore the R becomes an E. And that's the reason, because the R or the alif maqsoora in the root, it's an E. So most of the time when we change the derivatives on the tenses, some of these root letters do come back again. And that would be the same case with every single Finalweak verb, which is you add an alif after the first consonant, so it becomes ha. And then finally, the alif maqsoora reverts back to its original form, the root letter, and it's an E, so it becomes haki. And haki, that's the active participle, and we use it to refer to 2 things, the sayer and saying. So it refers to the person who does the action and the action itself. How do we change this form into the feminine? All you need to do is to add the feminine case to the end of it. So it becomes hakiye, hakiye. And how do we change the singular masculine form into the plural? All you need to do is to add the "in" suffix to the end of it to refer, or to be used to refer to a group of people. So we've got haki, hakiye, hakin. And this conjugation will apply to every single Finalweak verb. This conjugation will apply to every single Finalweak verb, which is you add an alif after the first consonant, and the final alif maqsoora, or the short alif, becomes an E, because that's how it is in the root verb. And if you change that after forming the active participle to the feminine, you'll add the feminine case at the end of it, so which is called ta marbuta, so it becomes hakiye. And then if you change it to the plural, you'll add another in to the end of it, so it's a hakin. Hakin. And here in this section, we've got a number of Finalweak verbs, such as ata, to give, haka, to say or speak, bana, to build, hawa, to like, kawa, to iron clothes, ara, to read, da'a, to invite. So da'a becomes da'i, da'iye, da'in. Ara becomes ari, ariye, arin. Or go for it and pronounce the letter qaf how it should be, so it's a qari, qariye, qarin. And again, whichever pronunciation you go for, it is absolutely fine. Kawa, kawi, kawiye, kawin. Hawa, hawi, hawiye, hawin. Bana, bani, which is a builder and a building. Baniye, banin. Haka, haki, hakiye, hakin. Ata, ati, atiye, atin. And this is a selection of Finalweak verbs and how do we conjugate them. So hopefully this helps you to understand that the grammar applies to every single verb which goes under the same category or under the same grammar, which is a Finalweak verb. In our fourth and final section, we'll be talking about doubled verbs. A doubled verb, it looks like that you've got a verb which has 2 letters, but in fact that's not. Because in Arabic we've got a grammar which says if you've got two letters of the same, you write it once and you write shadda on the top of it to give you an indication that underneath this grammatical case or diacritic, you've got two letters of the same. So radd, radd. And when you see it, you just pronounce that letter twice or make it a little bit more emphatic. So you'd say radd, radd, radd. And forming the active participle from a double verb would be as follows. As always, you need to add your alif, so it becomes ra. However, the dal gets undoubled with a singular masculine form. So you would say ra did, ra did, ra did. So here we've undoubled the dal, and we've added, of course, we've added our alif, which is the alif for the active participle. So it becomes radid, and radid refers to the person who's replying and to the action itself. And when forming the singular feminine form out of the masculine singular form, all you need to do is just to add the feminine case to the end of it. But we need to double back the D again. So it becomes radde, radde, radde. So that's the feminine conjugation, radde. And to change it to plural, you'll add the in back to the end of it. So that's the in suffix for group of people. So you would say raddin, raddin. Rad is to reply. Rad, radid, radde, raddin. And this grammar or these steps will apply to every single doubled verb in Levantine Arabic and all other dialects. And here in our final section, I've got a number of double verbs for you, such as zan, shak, hal, mar, hab, hat, shad, mad. Zan becomes zanen, zanne, zannin. Shak, shakik, shake, shakin. Hal, halil, halle, hallin. Mar, marir, marra, marin. Hab, habib, habbe, habbin. Hat, hatit, hatta, hattin. Shad, shadid, shadde, shaddin. Mad, madid, madde, maddin. All of these verbs, they have something in common. All of them are doubled verbs. They look like two-letter verb, but they're not. The final letter, as you see here, I'm highlighting, has got shadda on the top, which means you've got two letters of the same there. So we've got double N's there, double K, double L, double R, double B, double ta, double D, and double D. And when you form the masculine, you undouble them back again, so it becomes zanen, shakik, halil, marir, habib, and so on. But when we form the feminine, you double those two letters back again, so it becomes zanne, shakik becomes shake, halil becomes halle, and doubling those letters stays with the plural form. Great guys, and with this I'll end today's session. I hope you enjoyed and found it helpful, as it was requested by some of you. So hopefully now you have a better understanding and a clearer understanding how to deal or how to form the active participle from irregular verbs. If you enjoyed the session, as always, give it a massive thumbs up as it helps the channel, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done already, as you would always be notified. And if you do have any questions, so please feel free to drop them in the comment section below, and I would definitely make sure to come back to you. And I would definitely recommend to give it a try and form some sentences and leave them in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to reply to all of you and give you some feedback on your sentences. With that, I'll end today's session. Have a wonderful day and stay safe.